Hello and welcome. I'm Brian, the Clueless Guru, and today we're going to be talking about Nikto, or Nikto, or whatever you want to call it. Today we're calling it Nikto. And Nikto is a web reconnaissance platform that is used to help you find common misconfigurations, interesting information, headers, known vulnerabilities, and things like that. This is going to be a tool that you'll want to have in your toolbox if you're going to be doing anything in the realm of systems administration, website management, pen testing, red teaming, all those types of careers. And so what we're going to do is we are going to jump into our terminal and we are going to learn Nikto. So for our lab environment, what we have set up here is Kali, which has been recently installed into VMware Workstation Player. And if you don't have one set up, check out this other video that shows you exactly how to do that. Then we also have Metasploitable that we're going to be using within our lab. And this is going to be kind of our playground. And this is something that we're hosting. So of course, we have our own permission to do this testing. In order to get Metasploitable, it's simply you just do a Google search for Metasploitable. And you can just jump down into Offensive Security's Metasploit Unleashed, and they actually provide you a quick and easy link. So if we just scroll down here to Metasploitable, and then download the image file of Metasploitable 2 from SourceForge. It's a little bit older, but it's going to get the job done. And once you download that, next step will be to unzip it, and then you execute the VMX file that is unzipped from there. And that actually loads it right into VMware Workstation Player. Another option is you can go into the player and file, and you can open from within VMware Player. And once you do that, Metasploitable will launch and will start running. And as you can see here, you have the credentials right off the bat to log in as MSF admin, but that's not something that we need to do today. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the terminal in our Kali install. And first thing we need to do is we have been dropped into a network, but we don't necessarily know anything about this network setup. So with what we did with VMware Player is for both of these hosts, we have them set up to have a NAT address. And so what this means is both of these hosts are hiding essentially behind our main computer, and any traffic that goes onto the actual network that is posing as our base machine. This way, with the NAT connection, the hosts that are behind that NAT that are hiding, like in this case, these two are actually able to communicate to each other because they'll be on the same subnet. So what we'll do then is in our console, I have it escalated to root simply just by doing sudo -su and putting in my regular user account password, and that gets us into the root account. So I typically just start as root when I do most of my assessments, just because I generally know what I'm doing, and this is kind of like a burnable VM where if I destroy it, it's okay. I'll just build another one and try again. If this is something where you're doing this on a production box, or you kind of want to learn the ropes before you really go at it, I suggest maybe running it as a regular user for a while. Then you'll understand what actions actually require elevated privileges. And so this way, we're just going to continue running as root. So first thing we're going to do is figure out what our IP address is. So in this case, I do an ifconfig, ifconfig, and what this shows us is our inet address, which in this case is 192.168.93.128. So that is our address here, and with a net mask of 255.255.255.0, this is telling us that the range for our network is a standard class C range, which basically means that our network address space that we can have hosts on is going to be between 192.168.93.1 all the way up to 254. And as we can see here, the broadcast is set to 255. So what we're going to do is we're going to do NMAP. And we are going to scan our network to see if we can find this metasploitable box and see if there's anything else on the network as well that might be of interest. And if you're not familiar with NMAP, check out this other video and we walk you through all the common flags and how to use NMAP. So what we'll do here is NMAP. We'll do a SYN scan. We have the privileges and it's just my preferred method of scanning. So -S, capital S, we'll do a timing of 5 because this is all on the same machine and so we can have this communication go a little bit faster. So T5, we're just going to show only the open ports. We're not going to specify any specific ports to scan. We'll just let it do the most common ones. And so we don't have to do a port designation. And then from here, we will put in our network 192.168.93.0/24 or CIDR, CIDR 24. And basically what this is saying is taking that net mask information and just say scan everything in the 93 subnet. So 1 to 254. And with this command, we'll hit enter. Okay, so our results already came back. And as we can see here, so here's our command. We see that 93.1 responded back, 93.2 responded back. And so these are going to be VMware services. And then we have host.129. And we can see that there are a lot of services available here. And so what we're going to do is we are going to focus on port 80. And this is commonly going to be HTTP. So it's going to be a web server that's not hosted over SSL. And we're going to take this address, right click, copy selection, or Control-Shift-C to copy it to your clipboard. And then let's open up a web browser and navigate to that page. So we'll click on the dragon in the upper left-hand corner, and we'll just type in Firefox. And we'll click on the first result here, and we'll wait for it to open. Excellent. So we will put in our new address and paste, and hit enter. And so now here we see we have a landing page for Metasploitable 2. And it's just a pretty basic page, but we also see that there are several links. And as we hover over them, we see that they are essentially subsites within each of these directories. So for example, if we go to twiki, we'll see it's twiki, another page, and some information on how to get started. Or we could jump into phpMyAdmin, and we can see that it's a whole nother website. Matilde, dvwa, and webdav. So what we're going to do is, now that we found this site, some things that I like to do when first getting to know a site that I have permission to test with is to perform a Nikto scan against it, among other things. And so let's jump into the console and let's get started with that. So to become familiar with the flags, what we'll do is we'll type in Nikto -H. And that's going to give us the help menu for this. Let's expand our window so we have a little bit more space to work with. And so now as you look through here, you can see that there's a lot of options here. But what's great about Nikto is you really don't need a good number of them. So what we'll do is we'll start off with the most basic scan. And we're just going to say Nikto -h for host. And then we'll put in our address that we want to scan. And in this case, it's an IP address, 192.168.93.129. And that comes back to this page. So let's do our scan. Okay, so we have our results back. And so if we kind of just start from the top and work our way down, we can see that we're running Apache 2.2.8 on Ubuntu, and it also has dev2 available. And then we also can see that there's some headers in the HTTP that isn't defined or not set correctly, and that might be some interesting information that you can leverage later. And then also some Apache configurations, Apache being out of date, and also pointing out that the HTTP trace method is available, which may allow you to get additional information if you probe that service some more. And then there's also a PHP info.php page that was found as well. And so this is an output from a PHP function called PHP info. And this is something that can provide you with a lot of information, and it definitely helps during information gathering when you are fingerprinting a site. So in this case, let's navigate to it. And so here we can actually see PHP version 5.2.4, and we can see exactly what version the kernel is running and a bunch of the different configurations, where the configuration files are, and also all the different modules that are available within PHP. So depending on your goal, this can be a treasure trove of information, and you may be able to leverage this elsewhere. Going further with that is not within today's scope, but something to keep in mind. And so let's go back to our results, and we can see that there's a doc folder that shows up, and PHP reveals potentially sensitive information depending on the query string, and just other information leakages. There's also a test directory. Maybe there's something of interest in there that you want to take a look at. And also pointing out that there's a PHP myadmin directory. This actually gives us a lot of good information. On a lockdown website where everything has been addressed, this listing is going to be significantly shorter. And as a defender, of course, that's what you want. As an attacker, well, of course, you want more results. And so one thing that a lot of people don't really seem to catch on is that we have various subsites in here as well, and not just one big website. It's a bunch of little ones. And so now what happens if we were to take our Nikto scan and do another one, but specify twiki? Let's try that. So we'll go back to our command, and so it's going to be Nikto -H for host, and then the IP address. And then we're going to specify -root. And what that's going to do is append to the host this folder that you specify, and then it's going to do all of its checks with that in the path. And so let's run this. Excellent. So we have our results back, and we see that it looks like it might actually be fewer results. But in this case, it found twiki/lib, which might have something of interest. Looks like it still has trace enabled and a lot of other similar functions, because technically it is running still off of the same Apache server. So it's going to have some of the same results. So this one's a little less exciting. Maybe let's try another one. So let's take a look at Matilde. And so we'll grab this address, and we'll do the exact same scan. So -root/Matilde and scan. Okay, so it looks like we have a lot more results to go through. So let's just start at the top. Let's scroll up. And so we have our summary information, and then a lot of the repeat information. And now it's talking about it analyzed the session cookie. Notice that it doesn't have an HTTP only flag. It also identified a robots.txt file, which is something that is used to tell bots and crawlers not to either not access certain locations or specifically to access these locations, whether it is to cache them, to saving for historical purposes, or to index them for like a search engine. And so in this case here, we see that there's a disallow for maybe a passwords folder or a config inc or a bunch of other things. And this is going to be some interesting information. And if you find a robots.txt, make sure to actually look at it. And as we scroll through the results, we do see that it also did pick up on the passwords folder as well. And so let's jump into it and see what is in that passwords folder. And inside of here, we see a directory listing with accounts.txt. So we click on that, and it appears that we have found an admin account, admin password, and some other comments. This is a great first way into a network possibly, or into a website. Obviously, these are the kind of files you don't want to have on your server readily available. And so by doing these scans, you've been able to find them and get rid of them before the bad guys find them. And so as we continue through, there's another php info.php there. And let's take a look at this config.inc. Config.inc. So here we can see that there is, on the local host on the server, the user is root, connecting to the Metasploit database. And here on Samurai, the DB password is Samurai rather than blank. So this might be another tidbit of information that you can use if you find yourself having access to the database. So as we continue on, we can see that there's a lot of other results showing up here. A lot of these suggesting that there's file inclusions that are available. So next up, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the additional flags. Sometimes Nikto maybe doesn't play very well, or runs into some issues or stalls. Some things that we can do is we can set the verbosity to show you a lot more detail, and it's actually one thing that I like to do myself so I can actually see it do its job. And so here we're going to do a -D for display and then V for verbose, and we'll just hit enter. And as we can see, now it's showing you it's doing 404 checks, and it's doing all of these checks essentially. And this is a very useful feature for two reasons. One is if it gets hung up on something, you can see exactly where it gets hung up on, and then we can exclude that from future scans. And B, if you work in an office where other people can see your screens, it's going to make you look a lot busier. All right, so we're going to end up with the same results as we had before. And the downside here is it's not quite as easy to pick out where the results were. So what we can do is we can actually specify an output file. So what we'll do is we'll call it we'll just say meta.txt. And if you want, you can also specify the output format. And in this case, it would just be txt. I believe Nikto will just kind of take it by default, whatever the output extension is, and it will just interpret from there. But I've just gotten in the habit of specifying the format. And so with this, what we'll do is now we'll simply just do our scan again. One caveat with doing the verbose scan is that if you're doing this over maybe a cloud host and you're SSH'd into it, just keep in mind all this data has to get pushed down the pipe to your screen. And maybe to save some time and bandwidth is to only do the verbose flag while you're troubleshooting. Okay, so now that the test is done, we can just cat out that Nikto file, and we can see our results here. Just as if they were going to be spit out into the page, we can see them here as well. Some other things when it comes down to scanning are if you're working with something that's maybe a little less traditional. Maybe it's not on a standard web port, not on port 80, 8080, 443, 8443 kind of ports. And you need to specify something that's maybe like port 8001. And then just so Nikto doesn't have to make any assumptions, you can specify whether it's running over -SSL or no SSL. So is the website HTTP? If it is, then it's no SSL. If it's HTTPS, then it's -SSL. And as a bonus for sticking with me so far, I'm going to introduce you to another option that a lot of people don't seem to really know about, and that is to add additional headers to your requests. Because by default, Nikto doesn't allow you to actually add headers arbitrarily. The closest thing would be if you have an authorization header, you can do a basic authorization and you can use the ID flag for that. But if you're doing something like with OAuth, bearer token type of situation, that's not something that's natively done. Or if you need to specify a valid session cookie and do these scans, there is a way that you can do it through Nikto. Or if you wanted to, you can also do it through like Burp or another web proxy like Z Attack Proxy or Zap. And so what we're going to do is first to give credit to the person that I found this from, Sjord, which I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but thank you and apologies if I butchered your name. And so what we're going to do is we are going to inject our header into the user agent. And so as we can see in this code here, we define a new line and a carriage return, and then we do our request and we specify our user agent and we add in our header here at the end. And so we'll work through this. One note is I don't have anything showing you that it actually is working on the backside. Just know that that header information is making it to the server. So in this case here, what we'll do is we'll kind of start off with a clean slate, and we're just going to do this all as one line. And so as we saw, he had it in 3 lines. Let's just do it in 1. And so just follow along. NL equals $apostrophe/n. So /n is like a regular expression for new line. And then CR equals $apostrophe/r apostrophe. And again, regular expression for carriage return. And then we'll do a semicolon between these commands to say, run this command, now run this command, and now let's run this other command. And so here we'll just do Nikto, our host, 192.168.93.129. We're not going to do all the other fancy flags at this point. And then we specify user agent. And you can put in whatever user agent you want, depending on your rules of engagement doing your test. If you need certain flags in here, this is a great place to put it. In this case, we'll just call it Nikto. And then we will put in our placeholders. And so this is where we do a $ curly bracket, carriage return, $ curly bracket, new line. And then this is where we add in our header. So for example, if we wanted to add in a bearer token, we would do authorization, bearer, and then some large bearer token value. And then we close our string. And so from here, we would run our command. And then now that header is added in the HTTP request. It would essentially look like user agent, Nikto, next line would be authorization, bearer, and that value. And then next line would be a continuation of whatever the normal request was. So this is a great technique. It's something I've had to use myself when I wanted to make sure that my session is authenticated and valid. Because by default, when you're doing your scans, you're doing an unauthenticated scan. And that means that you only get a part of the picture. Whereas you if you introduce valid cookies, a valid authorization header, or any other header information that is required to make that session valid, then you are doing an authenticated session. And that will actually get you a step up from what a lot of other testers are doing, and will be able to get you a more thorough scan. Okay, so that is Nikto in a nutshell. We've learned the most common flags that are used for Nikto, and we saw how powerful it can be at helping you find a lot of information in a hurry, whether it is misconfigurations, outdated software, or some juicy information. If you enjoy the layout of the material and the content, please like and subscribe, and check out the other videos and share. And with that, I'm Brian, the Clueless Guru, signing off.